Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session. I just have to get used to the mic. I'm usually not used to talk with mic, so I have to be very, very nicely with my voice. My name is Andrea Morf from Nordregio. Here we have Michael Kull from Nordregio and Riku Varjopuro from Psyche. And we want to together discuss with you the results from BalticSCOPE from a research perspective from Nordregio and Psyche. And we would like to also understand how you see on our results and how you think you would like to take them further. And our session will be moderated by Johanna Egerup from the Swedish, now I have to say, Swedish Agency for Marine and Water Management, SWAM. And so she will guide you through the session, and then Michael and myself and Riku will pop up every now and then like little Caspers and say something, and then we change. And you will also get the possibility to give your feedback in the form of post-its. And in order to make sure that you know what we're talking about, this is, so to say, the aims and purpose of this session. Findings on outcomes and obstacles and enablers in transboundary marine spatial planning collaboration. And we would like to upscale our findings beyond BalticSCOPE and beyond the Baltic. And we hope that we have some people from other areas. So please, if you're from outside the Baltic, who is from outside the Baltic? Yeah, we have some. And then, of course, we have Wes. And this is something where I would like now to turn over to Johanna to introduce the rest of our group. Please, Johanna, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah. It was on? Yeah? Can you hear me? No, does it work? Yes? Oh. Thank you, thank you. As Andrea said, I will be the guide through this session. I just came from the session about the defense and the maritime spatial planning, so I will just have to swift gears now and talk about this instead. As a guide here, I will introduce the speakers, and I also get the presentation started on time and also finish on time. And my role is also to get you in the audience engaged in the discussion. And just some practical issues before we start. You see, I use the mic. As all the sessions here, it's recorded and live streamed. So if you have a question, please use the mic and please put it really close to your mouth, because if you do like this, you won't hear anything. The outline, as Andrea said, is that we will first hear a little bit about the background, about the BalticSCOPE project, for those of you who are not familiar with it. And then there will be 2 blocks of presentations given by Nordregio and Psyche. And after each of these presentations, we will have the panel of 3 experts with their different perspective of the MSP process. They will share their comments. I will introduce them soon. And after each block, there will also be time for a little bit for you in the audience to ask some questions and have some discussions. And as Andrea said, that this is quite an interactive session. The purpose of the session is to discuss the results, and you should share your experience. And therefore, we have the post-its that have the... Yeah, you will distribute them, and you can put it on the charts over there later before you leave. And there are 3 different colors, and you have them there. Okay, so and the thing is, the red is obstacles, the green is for enablers, and the yellow is for general reflections. And then you just put it over there later, and we will remind you later to use these. See. Any practical questions before we start? Then before I give the mic to Andrea, I just want to introduce the 3 panelists over here. We have Anni, Konsap, your advisor of the planning department of the Estonian Ministry of Finance. And then we have... yeah, you have to stand up. You will see her later. And then we have Jan Schmidt-Bauer-Krona. You're a senior advisor at the Swedish Agency for Marine and Water Management. And maybe we should change name, because I always I never remember what her name is in English. Our boss didn't either in the morning. And then the third panelist is Wesley Flannery. You're a lecturer from the Queen's University, and you're from Belfast. So you're not part of the Baltic. So that will be interesting to hear. I will introduce you more later. Now, Andrea, just some short introduction, some short background on the Baltic SCOPE project.
Yes, and I got 4 minutes for that. I will try to hurry up. So this project is a very special project. It is rather prominent now at this second MSP Forum, as you have already realized, and it came up quite a few times this morning in the discussion, and we will just continue on that track. It is one of the first times where actually authorities are collaborating to make marine spatial planning happening. It is also, for the Baltic, I think it's the first, isn't it, Thomas? It's the first one for the Baltic where the authorities are collaborating. And it is somehow, if you think about the role of research and industry, there's usually this kind of the research and development. And now it's the research and the development are turned around. It's more development and research. So it's the authorities from Germany, Denmark, Estonia, Latvia, Poland and Sweden. It is regional organizations dealing with environmental issues and planning and development. And it's 2 research organizations, Nordregio and Psyche. And our role has been to observe and analyze, and when the people during the project discovered that we're good at writing protocols and editing reports, we got some new tasks during the project. And one important role is also the feedback. So the idea is that we somehow put a mirror in front and share our observations during the project and after the project. And this, what we're doing here is actually part of it. As you've already heard this morning, BalticSCOPE is a platform for communication and knowledge development and sharing. It has been a two-way of knowledge development, building and learning, both from the national, lifted to the transboundary and back again. And people have been working in 2 different areas. The southwestern Baltic, which is a bit more intensively used and where there is already some marine spatial plans available and quite a few spatial areas, hotspots, that need to be resolved. And on the other hand, the eastern Baltic, where there may be hotspots, but we are not so much aware of it, and also the data are a bit less dense and the users are a little bit less dense. So the idea was not that we involve all levels in the project from the beginning, but to focus on the national level and the stakeholders there and the outer economic zone. So 2 complementary case studies have developed through a process from identification to solution finding. A southwestern Baltic case, working more in trilateral on concrete problems, and eastern Central Baltic case working in thematic groups and more about the process. And there are some specific roles, results like the ecosystem approach, a green map, and topic papers that have gotten more input from that part, whereas here have been some really concrete results for cross-boundary problems and buffer zones and so on. So I think that's the next one.
Thank you, Andrea. Now we will continue with the presentation of the results of your lessons learned, and I want to introduce both of you. Both Mikael Kull and Andrea Morf, you have worked with these issues in almost 2 decades, 20 years, both of you. Been part of it, yeah? Andrea, you have been working more with participation, conflict management, both in the coastal and the marine planning area. And Mikael, you have working with the multi-level governance and sustainable development issues. And you're now the project manager at Nordregio, who's in charge of this lesson learned project. So please give your introduction.
Thank you. The mic is still working. I will start off with a little method bit, and then I will kick over the ball to Michael to present the results. And what we have done is we have been sitting like flies on the wall. Bzz, there it comes in many, many meetings, and from the beginning maybe the people felt, well, what are these guys doing there? This is a little bit strange. And more during the process we have become really parts of the project, and that has been a real pleasure. And I only started half a year ago, so it had to go even faster. We were basing our work on an analytical framework based on the territorial governance concept. And what we are now doing, and what we are presenting the results now, is from a project participant survey, what they think to different issues with regard to our analytical framework, and where the obstacles and the enablers are, and what they have learned. So here we want also to thank the project participants to really participating in our survey and providing great answers, which you will now see also in the presentation. And what we are doing is somehow trying to put a mirror, a loving mirror, in front of our project participants, and show what they maybe want to be, what they might be, and how they can develop themselves further. And of course this also needs some kind of a feedback, and this will happen tomorrow in focus group interviews with the 2 different cases, and at a later stage with the case leaders and the project leaders. So now I think I have said everything that I should say. Oh yes, that's our framework, and it is going to be implemented in 4 different parts. On one hand, how maritime specificities and jurisdictional boundaries, how the project partners have been dealing with that. You will see quite a few results on that, because this is one of the important challenges, as we have seen, but there has also already occurred quite a bit of learning. We have cross-sector integration and synergies, which is one of the important purposes of marine spatial planning. Stakeholder involvement, project partners dealing mainly with institutional stakeholders so far, and then also, of course, the collaboration, coordination of the institutional actors themselves. And now I think I would like to turn over the ball to Michael.
Please do. Yeah, thank you very much. How does it?
No, it's already there.
It's working. Close enough. Yes.
Ice cream.
Oh, I do that. Okay, great. Thanks for a good contextualization, Andrea. Before we dive further into this 4 dimensions, let us give you some overview. Who are the scopers, and how do they think? So we ask a question in the survey. So when you work in the project, so from which perspectives do you actually do that? Is it from a national, from a transnational, pan-Baltic perspective, or from both perspectives? And you can see here from that slide, the huge majority works from both perspectives. So what we think is like what we see, and we are happy to see a kind of an emerging or a manifestation of a pan-Baltic or regional mindset, which is a very great foundation for working in a transboundary project. Or as a planner or respondent said it much more elegantly, so if the MSP should make any sense, then we have to think pan-Baltic, so that's clear. So now the first dimension, maritime specificities, jurisdictional boundaries, are very hard to... I worked with multi-level governance for quite some time, as Johanna said. So for me, this is like really multi-level governance, horizontally, vertically, and BalticSCOPE learning. Or the examples that we give you here is about... So we work at different stages in national MSP processes, and how do we come through information exchange, through data exchange, to co-construction of maps, towards a better understanding of national planning systems. So this is just one example that we want to give you here. I mean, we could spend the whole afternoon to share your great results and great obstacles and enablers, but we have only 15 minutes. So the question then, we asked project partners, you are at different stages in your national MSP process, is it a challenge for collaboration? And a huge majority said yes. But then again, if you looked into the answers that were provided, then you see some kind of nuances there. So as 2 respondents said, well, yes, it's about different viewpoints. Countries have different challenges, thus focusing on certain topics was not that easy. And then again, in the second answer, you see already some kind of a deviation. So, but also there's also something positive in there. So the less advanced countries can really learn from the experience of the more advanced ones. So in a way that this obstacle, so it's not a kind of a barrier to collaboration, but it's an obstacle that little by little becomes overcome or turns into an enabler. So we can learn from each other, we can also foresee potential mistakes that others did and avoid them in the future. So clearly this enriches the project. And then as I like this citation very much, so it's if we want to understand the different planning systems, then it's much about personal involvement, direct communication, so you cannot achieve this by browsing through national MSP homepages. Very important. So then, no surprise, or as a positive surprise, information exchange worked out quite well, as you can see here. There are some obstacles, some related to country differences. We talked about them earlier on, but also inside countries, so dispersed knowledge within partner countries, and how do we bring them to the national level and then further up to the transnational level. It's about sectoral stakeholders, a multitude, how to motivate and engage them. But many more positive issues, enablers, results. And I think a starting consideration here, the citation here about the awareness. So if we don't efficiently exchange information, we really can't talk about cross-border issues. Information exchange, then how did this work out? So the topic paper approach was a very relevant tool here, where partners worked together on identifying synergies, conflicts, and saw where the national interests lie and what the sectoral status quo is, but also then, of course, physical meetings. And then Andrea had it in her introduction, the Southwest Baltic case, specifically the B and territory meetings, so zooming in on specific sub-area problems. Quality of sectoral experts was highlighted, but also support by regional research organizations such as HELCOM providing data, and my organization writing on the way assessment reports to keep track of how the development in the different project phases works out. So a very nice result as well. So most of our respondents said they have gained a deeper understanding of project partners' national planning systems. Some obstacles also were here. I gave them country differences, but also lack of human resources. And also when I look at Anni, so you were in the panel this morning, then you are, I think yesterday you were somewhere, today you are, again after this you are in another panel, and tomorrow as well. So kind of this duplication, triplication, or quadruplication of tasks, so that you have people working in many projects at the same time, and also national MSP processes as well. And change of partnerships was also one issue. But overall, as one person said, well, no obstacles, just opportunities, so fantastic starting condition then. But what stimulated learning? So it was face-to-face discussions, personal involvement, direct communication, also repeating of things, also understanding sometimes nuances. So whilst the overall picture might have been known, but also understanding nuances of the national planning system is very important. And as one respondent said, well, plenty of new information experience, what a great exercise from this perspective. So cross-sector integration synergies. Here we would like to look into cross-sector synergies, whether successfully promoted, between which sectors, and then again the topic paper approach, I said it is one of the key enablers. So most of our respondents said, yes, we successfully promoted cross-sector synergies. I want to dig into detail here, but take it as a kind of a teaser for the fantastic reports that are coming out in February from the Southwest Baltic case and the Central Baltic case, how they solve these issues in the specific case, and also, of course, for our lessons learned report, which looks into, analyzes the processes towards achieving those. But still, I wanted to give you this slide because some of our respondents said, well, this was the most innovative element of the project. It was the most interesting and appreciated also by all stakeholders. But at the same time, also, even if we worked only with potential synergies, it was clearly an eye-opener for planners in MSP, and probably also for others working in other sea basins, so looking into the reports to learn from that experience. But still, we want to give you some perception of what sectors, where synergies were created, and this is for the overall BalticSCOPE project, mainly environment and fisheries, also in energy and environment. But if we would differentiate between the two cases, then the Central Baltic case had environment, fisheries, and energy environment on par, so they're both on first place. And in the Southwest Baltic case, environment, fisheries was clearly number one, and then number two would be energy and shipping. So the stakeholders. Was it joint identification of synergies, conflict solutions, and the fact that they were mainly worked with national authority stakeholders so far? This is something for the future to work with. And were all relevant sectors represented as the first questions. So here we see some, half of them agreed that this was the case, but also many said no, they were not integrated. So whilst the main sectors were represented, according to some respondents, also depending again on the different stages of the MSP, national MSP, respondents felt that we missed them also in the transboundary workshops, to some even with some consequences for the results and the outcome of the workshops. Some examples were given as well, which sectors were there, but I think important also for people working, starting up similar projects in the future, maybe one might think about, as one respondent said, kind of a joint stakeholder involvement strategy would be in place in order to achieve sufficient representation and engagement. So then we come to the kind of the meta element of this territorial governance framework, the coordination, collaboration of institutional actors, which allows us to reflect at very different levels whether the project was successful, where we can identify obstacles and enablers, from the individual planners level towards the institution as such, further up to the case, and then to the project level as such. And we want to do that. Individual learning, institutional learning, creation of stronger links, 2 different case approaches, and then a strengthened Baltic approach emerged. So yes, clear agreement. All partners thought that I was equipped with new knowledge, tools, and methods to deal with transboundary issues in MSP. Also, my organization was encouraged to integrate this transboundary perspective. So, positive outcome here. Then the 2 case approaches, we talked about them. Central Baltic thematic, process-oriented, and I think what Anni said this morning, that for the Central Baltic case, very clearly so that, I mean, you don't need to have specific hotspots or topics that need a conflict resolution to work on these issues. So this was kind of the motivation of the Central Baltic case, which led to good general discussions and also helped them to identify stakeholders and sectors topic-wise. Again, for the Southwest case, Jacek's example of the black hole, I mean, this was to be tackled with their approach, like zooming into specific sub-areas and through bilateral talks and identify national interests and deepen discussions around these issues. And the project level, finally. So BalticSCOPE created stronger links between the planning authorities that took part in the project. An informal network has been set up, communication between different planning authorities set in motion, a platform of exchange of knowledge, ties between people have been established, and importantly also, you see it at the very bottom, sector institutions were able to meet with the planners, discuss interests of other sectors at the sea and MSP for the subject, as the subject for the very first time. So it was a hard work. It's still a long way to go, but we're in the process, and let's race to remaining and upcoming challenges. What still needs to be done? I said synergies have been identified, but solutions, if we believe our planners, there's still some way to go. So only half of them agreed that we did that. The issue of regional local authorities. Many people said that we haven't probably sufficiently involved them, although this project, as Andrea said, was designed to work with national level authorities. But still, it's difficult to involve local actors. So how do we build valleys and avenues to involve them? And also political actors should be more actively involved if we want to believe our respondents. Again, they were not identified as a target group. It depends on the national processes, how active they were. But also a lot depends on them, so we would look into in the future projects how to involve them. And as one said, MSP needs much more publicity. And also interesting, the perception of one respondent. It's a political process, but also an opportunity for a planner to influence politicians in the right direction. So which way do we want to operate? So maybe both streets. So that's, for me, summary and...
Yeah, summing up, you can see that there has been quite a bit of individual and institutional learning, and that there has been a lot of interaction, and that to some extent one really can say there has been quite a bit of success, and links have been strengthened, and we're going towards some kind of a pan-Baltic approach to marine spatial planning. But of course we want to discuss this with you. And then of course another thing to look into the crystal ball about is what do we do with, for instance, subnational authorities and political stakeholders and other types of groups and perspectives. And now I need to press the button again, and then it's actually up to you and all of us to discuss, what are we going to do about this? And now I turn over to Johanna.
Thank you, Andrea and Mikael. Really interesting to hear. And now we will hear some from the panel. You can step up here. And both Jan and Anni, you can stand behind the table if you want. Both Jan and Anni, you have been part of the BalticSCOPE project, and Wesley, you are independent. So it will be really interesting to hear your perspective. And maybe, Anni, you can say a couple words about yourself and your role in the MSP process first, and then you can give your reflections.
Yes, well, my job nationally is to coordinate maritime spatial planning in Estonia, make sure it happens. In the BalticSCOPE project, my ministry was one of the partners, and we participated in the Central Baltic case study area. I really liked what our shipping expert Madli Kopti told me this morning, that so far, or let's say, I don't know, 8 years back, 7 years back, maritime spatial planning was an researchers thing in Europe. Researchers did projects, cooperated, collaborated, and so on. And now it has actually come to in the view of the nations, the governments, and so on. So it's and BalticSCOPE is one of the good examples of it. That this time it's not a research project; it's actually governments or representatives of governments are doing hands-on work. And this is for me one of the main like positive outcomes of BalticSCOPE is the getting to know each other part, accepting the situation in the Baltic, accepting that we are in different stages, and we maybe think a bit differently. We have different priorities. I think Latvian and Estonian shipping lanes is a good example of it. But at the same time, we accept each other, and we still manage to find ways to work around it. And in addition of accepting each other, we've also managed to bring together different stakeholders in different sectors and make them talk to each other, which kind of shows that that maritime spatial planning is not. Maybe it's not all about the results. It's not about the plan. It's the process. It's the talking to each other, trying to come to, I don't know, if not common solutions, then maybe common sense.
Thank you, Anni. And then over to Jan. You can also say a few words about yourself and your role in the process.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Jan Schmidt-Krona, sorry. I'm from Sweden and working with the Swedish MSP, where I'm specialized in the environmental dimension of it and the strategic environmental assessment. And I've been involved in both case studies, actually, mainly the Central Baltic one, but where I'm been working with the ecosystem approach. There's a session tomorrow. And also, but I also to some extent been in the Southwest case. And I think especially in the Southwest case, one focus was this about, which was mentioned at the previous session on recommendations, if we could do planning or not. And there was some sort of agreement that we can't plan together. But somehow we still went quite far. We were the planning authorities. We sat down. We looked at the areas specifically. We tried to understand each other's interests from a national perspective in the different areas. We wrote it down. We discussed it. So it's quite a lot of important work, even if it's not planning. So Andrea mentioned it as a collaboration, and it's been really good collaboration. And I think that the project has had a very good function with the kind of bringing X, Y, and Z together. First of all, bringing the planners together, as I just mentioned, to discuss certain issues, and in the Central Baltic, not the least important, the thematic interests, like the environmental aspect, but also bringing the planners and the researchers together. And at the practical level, it has been very useful to have both Nordregio and Psyche involved, because we practitioners, we have our task and we have to focus on it, and it's narrow, and we need someone who can kind of raise the view, lift us up, so we needed that. And I also think bringing the sector people together and forcing them to discuss MSP, and I think that has really raise the awareness from their part that MSP is something new, and they have to adapt to that somehow. We had fishery and a discussion of what fishery means or what MSP can mean for fishery, and we have also energy, all these sector interests where there are established regulations at an international level, and now suddenly MSP comes in. So we have to have that discussion of what role should MSP have. So I think that this enabling function of bringing all these people together is very important. Let's see if I had some. And also that this, we have to find the forums for that, and they don't have to be that formal all the time. Jacek mentioned it today as well, that the formal discussion is often quite lacking words, so you don't get the reasoning behind. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jan. A lot of cooperation. Now, Wesley, you're an outsider.
Yeah, thanks very much for the invite, first of all. So I'm a lecturer in Queen's University Belfast, and my research is on marine spatial planning. I'm definitely an outsider because a bit of a charlatan. I've never produced a marine plan. I just go around critiquing other people's work, which is what academics do. So first of all, I've been asked to look at the enablers, obstacles, and future steps for the Baltic Sea. First of all, I think it's a fantastic project in terms of the enablers that the project itself has created. A few years ago, I wrote a paper about what are the conditions for transboundary planning that need to happen. And first of all, it's developing this understanding of interdependencies, that the planner in nation state A, his actions or her actions are interdependent on the actions of people in nation state B, and that's quite difficult to actually achieve, and I'll come to the reasons for that in a while. But it's also create shared experiences. If you look at, there's a long tradition of transboundary planning in water management, and if you look at the best projects that have been published in transboundary water management, they actually start with very small actions and just getting to know each other. So Larry Hildebrand wrote a paper about US-Canada cooperation in the marine. And he said they didn't start with trying to come in with a full collaborative plan and get everything started in one go. It started with picking key projects, key ideas that they knew they could work on collaboratively. And I think this is what the project has shown, that you can pick a few issues and move forward on them. In terms of the obstacles, I don't know if I've theorized this a little bit too much, but if you group all the obstacles that Michael's been talking about, they can all fall under a category called the nation state. It's a bit tautological to say the nation state is an issue for transboundary planning, but it really is. And we're not going to get around that. If anything, the nation state is becoming more prominent. Brexit, Trump, all these issues, the nation state is rising again. But to get around those issues or to think about it differently, I think we need to break transboundary planning down into two things: transnational planning and international planning. And transnational planning is planning where the boundaries don't matter anymore. Boundaries become fuzzy, and that nation states can cooperate and agree that the boundaries don't really matter. So if you think about the common travel area, that's an area of transnational planning where boundaries or borders for certain people don't really matter anymore. The other is more difficult. It's international planning, where you have formal agencies working across boundaries, but they're guided by what must happen in their own area, and the boundary becomes very fixed. So when we talk about transboundary planning and what we expect planners to do, we have to understand that they're bound by the nation state, and there's only certain issues that will be transnational, and that a lot of issues will, particularly economic issues, will remain international, and that the boundary will very much stay in effect. Just one final comment then on the next steps. I think it's wonderful that planners from different jurisdictions have got together, and how you carry that forward is really the value of this project. It's getting people working together and building on that sense of interdependency. One way I was thinking, when I was reading about the different plans, they're at different stages. All these plans are going to have to undergo SEA processes. And I think you invite the planners from the other jurisdictions in at the very start of those SEA processes, rather than sending them a draft SCA strategy and getting them to comment on it. If you invite them in at the start, they can learn, and they can also talk about, well, this actually has an impact on my jurisdiction. And it's just one comment I think might be worth taking forward. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Wesley. So I think now we have heard the panelists. You can sit down, and then we use the mic if there were any questions, because now it's you in the audience. Do you have any reflection of what you just heard, or do you have any questions for the panelists or for Mikael or Andrea? Please raise your hand and you will get a mic. Here, someone. Please introduce, say your name and where you come from also.
Hello, my name is Madli Kopti from Estonian Maritime Academy, and on the other hand also from the Estonian Marine Institute. Actually, this is what I want to say out, but during lunch we had a discussion with energy guy, and we resulted in that there is actually a need to screen the stakeholders, because during this process it was very complicated, not complicated, but it was quite tricky business how to get them on the board. But actually during this project we got a lot of experiences in cooperation with the stakeholders. And maybe there should be carried out and analyzed that how to involve them, who to involve, when to involve, and what is the trigger to motivate them. Because it's stated in literature that they should be on the board from the very beginning and so on, so on. I'm not sure based on this practical experience. They want to see already something very specific to start to discuss. If we involve them from the very beginning, this process is getting so long, and then the interest will be lost. So it's something to think about.
Thank you. Michael, do you want to reflect on this? When should the stakeholders be involved to make a good
good
process?
question. But then again, as we discussed it also 2 weeks ago with Andrea and some others, Jacek, at the BSR forum, exactly about that question. So that's the kind of the next step, I think. So I think Baltic SCOPE, and that's very important to see, it's a part of a chain of projects. Baltic Lines and Participate were about stating the fact that now we need to, in order to create a robust multi-level governance framework for MSP in the Baltic Sea region, we need to, as a next step, we need to bring the national authorities together to kind of level the playing field. And then we can think about the next steps, how to bring it down. So, I mean, we need to first have a consensus. Also, in addition to bringing in they also operated with sectoral stakeholders, but have a consensus, work on the synergies and identify possible solutions. And then as a next step, then I think we can bring the focus on the subnational level and develop them. And as they said, I'm really working on this stakeholder engagement strategies. Or then as there's some further projects, we are starting with one soon, a bonus project on exactly on this developing decision-making model, and the Basmati project, which starts in July. So the way we look exactly into this, so bringing in from the national level and try to mobilize, how to mobilize and how to create joint decision-making models for that. So I fully agree on that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Anni?
I want to thank Madli for the good note or remark. I think she's absolutely right. One of the mistakes we've done in Estonia as well is that we try to get to as many stakeholders as possible without raising the question of why are we actually involving them, and I think that's the most important part. That's behind every stakeholder. You have the question: what do you need from them, and why are you talking to them? Because otherwise there's just a lot of noise and confusion for everybody.
Thank you. Another question here? You can use my...
Okay, thank you. My name is Michael Gilek from Södertörn University. I have a question to you guys from the project. I wonder, when you work with transnational planning, do you see the challenges and opportunities that you find there? Are they the same that you will find when you try to implement the plans later on? Or is it, I mean, you know, in the environmental policy, it's often easier to agree on aims than to implement, you know, the aims into real action. Will it be the same here, or?
Michael, or do you want to reflect on that? Jan and Anni, you were this. Jan.
It's a tricky question. I'm not sure I really understood it, but because you could see it also. There was a discussion that at the policy level we agree, but at the practical hands-on, what ends up in the plan, there might be disagreement. It's not that issue, or more of the implementation part of.
It could be on the. There was this term in a previous session on the future dimension of the plan. I guess if you're. I guess if there are different ambitions in the plan, if some plans might be more like grandfathering or sort of what you have already, and other plans would be on trying to see sort of future developments in a.
Oh, okay.
Will there?
I think that we, as Jacek said, that we somehow we are different, and we have also different. It's also been obvious in the project that the different planning systems and traditions on how binding MSP is or not, and relation to the coastline, how far in it goes. There are differences, so I think we have to accept that there will be some plans will be more strategic and some will be more hands-on, perhaps focusing on in a shorter term or so. But I still think we should we have to work with the policy overarching framework to, as far as possible, harmonize, even though we're different in some sense.
Thank you. We have a tight schedule, so we can save. If you have questions, there will be more time later. Because now I would like to introduce our next speaker. You are Riku Varjopuro. We'll talk about the evaluation framework, and you are a head of the interactive governance unit at the Finnish Environment Institute. You can take that one.
Thanks. Johanna, just put the timer on so I don't spend my 15 minutes. Right. Okay, I'm going to give you an. Oops. Sorry. Yes. Yep. Right. Okay. I'm now giving you the overview of the evaluation and monitoring framework. That has been Syke's main job in this project, to develop the framework, not to evaluate the process, but to make a framework. And obviously, we have been working closely with Nordregio, who has been doing the lessons learned parts, because we are actually interested in the same issues, maybe from slightly different perspectives. And then I will come at the end of my talk to the issue of how to identify enablers and obstacles while doing evaluation. And this is evaluation of the transboundary collaboration especially, and not MSP in general. Okay, the outline of my talk is first about the material that this is based on, and then one slide about the key findings in relation to making the evaluation framework, and then, well, the framework itself, and finally is what we actually can learn from this, what was the interesting results of this work. And well, then first about the material, it is the people that were clearly the greatest asset in BalticSCOPE. Our planners especially, really resourceful and pragmatic as planners are. They were working together in series of meetings, for planners meetings, and also in the project meetings. And what I did with my colleagues was to observe the meetings, conduct interviews, group interviews and individual interviews, and also organize a couple of group works. And all this was done with an idea that to identify, well, the enablers and obstacles, in a sense that if I was to evaluate this kind of process, what would be the things that I should focus on? And that was the kind of the point of observations and interviews. And then the other part of the material was a literature review that we did in the beginning. We reviewed literature on evaluation of MSP and evaluation of terrestrial planning. And there is quite a lot of that evaluation frameworks and assessment tools and all that. So there's a vast literature to build on. And then about 2 points actually about the key findings first. Well, this has been repeated several times. There are differences between countries, that's obvious. And so then the issue is to how to overcome these international barriers and how to collaborate even if you have these differences. And this is a kind of a Baltic scope message, clearly. And this actually in the evaluation framework relates especially to the evaluation of the process. And then from the literature you can take the challenge of attribution or contribution, meaning that if you observe a change in, for instance, the use of sea areas, then how do you know that it's the plan that is causing it, or is it some other factors? When we know that MSP operates in an environment that there is various human activities, different policies are affecting, and also natural processes can create. They can cause also the changes, or they create uncertainties at least, and also time lags. And so this is then more relates to the outcome evaluation part that we also want to take, even if it's quite challenging in MSP in general and in transboundary collaboration especially. Okay, and then the framework that will be published, the final report will be published in end of February, like most of the BalticSCOPE deliverables. It consists of, it's structured in 5 topics. There is 13 criteria and 65 indicators at the moment, and we are still working on it, especially taking the lessons learned reports and also the recommendations from the project as a input. And then there is suggestions for evidence, that is mainly the monitoring part of it, how to monitor this kind of processes. And then the topics are, well, 4 of them are more or less the different steps of MSP processes. There's preparation, and then there is the actual decisions and the plans made, and then outcomes, what are the results, or what could be the results, and then follow-up and evaluation. And this is with the idea that this will be reviewed in any case, these different national MSPs in the future. And then there is 2 very important cross-cutting themes. It's participation and communication that has to be included in all steps of MSP processes, also including the transboundary collaboration, where communication is tricky, but participation also can be quite difficult, as we have seen. And then, well, most of these criteria, they relate to the process, evaluation of the process, but we also want to discuss of the outcomes. And then, especially regarding the outcomes, not to forget the process, but I will mainly focus in a couple of last slides on the outcome part. So, what did we actually learn? What was really the interesting things while making the evaluation framework? And there's also a methodological suggestion for evaluation, for future evaluations. And well, like I said, there are different challenges and uncertainties involved, and it means the conclusion there is that the evaluation framework that we have, it can only be a succession of possible criteria and indicators, because you cannot make a kind of a universal list of indicators and criteria and apply that in every context, except if they were very general level, and then they would not be very useful. And so the evaluation framework has to be adjusted, and then the methodological succession would be to base the evaluation on the theory-based approach, which is almost by definition it's a bottom-up, built-for-purpose approach, and so that you can build it for the context. And well, then about the theory-based evaluation, it's not a specific method, but it's more like a philosophy of evaluation, and I would say that it's quite mainstream nowadays in policy evaluation. And well, you may be familiar with the concepts of like intervention theory, program theory, intervention logic, and logical framework, and these are kind of part of the same thinking of policy making and evaluation. And well, but what is the theory here that we are talking of? I suppose there are quite many practitioners here, and you may feel a bit uncomfortable when someone says that you should have a theory-based approach. But here, actually, the theory is the theory that, or theories that planners have in their mind when they are doing planning, and stakeholders have in their mind when they are engaging in these processes. And so it's a theories of planners, and I don't know, does it make you less nervous or more nervous? But in any case, so it's not an academic theory from a textbook, but actually the theory of change. And the theory of change is an understanding of how a spatial plan will produce results. What are the mechanisms and processes, how you can reach the goals. Well, you can organize it in 5 steps. First, and critical one is the formulation of plausible theories of change. And then, well, the next one is to formulate and prioritize evaluation questions based on these theories of change. And this is very important to know that this has to be done in a collaborative process with the planners and with the stakeholders, because there are different theories of change around, and you must understand them, and you must have a discussion about them so that stakeholders also know, everybody knows them, and then you can discuss the evaluation questions, what would be the relevant ones. And then, well, the next one is basically the collecting of evidence, and then is the analysis of the evidence, and this is, well, I'm sorry, this is a bit textbook lingo, I admit, but mainly the point here is that then you analyze the results in relation to the theories of change. And then the final part is to making the conclusions. And this is important to, you can identify breakdowns, for instance, why theory of change doesn't seem to work like you thought they would. But then you can also go deeper to side effects and especially the program effectiveness, and so that are you reaching the goals that were set. But then you can go even deeper to for instance, to explain the cause-effect associations. But this is important to discuss, obviously, already here, so that the conclusions would be relevant for the stakeholders and the planners. And then about the theories of change, and this is about the impact assessment part. And so it's, well, here's the intervention. This is the planning process, produces a plan, and then there is impact, so that you should try to understand that how you can reach then the impacts or the objectives that you set in the beginning. And you could take an example of transboundary collaboration. It could be, for instance, an agreement on certain transboundary planning solution, and then the immediate outcomes would be acknowledgement of those transboundary agreement in national process, and then you should observe at one point a change in national MSP, and then the whole point and the expected impact is the improved coherence of planning of maritime activities. Of course, this is a bit abstract. We have identified in BalticSCOPE more concrete ones, and we will take these in the final report. But this is all very nice, linear and simple, and it also gets, but it can also get much more interesting when you really start to look at what are the assumptions, that how these outputs will lead to outcomes and impacts, what are the risks that these links are not actually taking place, what are the external factors that you have to take into account. And then, well, this is how you can identify enablers and obstacles regarding the outcome evaluation. But obviously, you can have modified questions, and you should have modified questions to look at the process and the process evaluation. But yeah, just don't have time to really go to that far. But so there's a very important, even bigger arrow at this area. And well, then the final slide about the at which stages you should or you could practice evaluation. I think that the most important one would be the ex-ante evaluation of planning of the processes, to already then start to think in this these theories of change in concrete terms, and that will help you to identify the possible enablers and obstacles, and so that you can anticipate some of the coming problems. But then, of course, ex post evaluation, if you want to do such, that will then you will have more evidence of what's happening, and then you can identify the breakdowns and to do real evaluation based on empirical evidence. But then I think very important is these special planning processes. They are always very long, and then you have to, and we are recommending that you would build a monitoring system for following what is happening, and then you can have midterm evaluations and the checking points that where are you going with your processes.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Riku. Well, now we have heard some of the framework about the evaluation, and I will give the floor to the panelists again. And what are your thoughts on this evaluation? Can we evaluate MSP, and what do you think about the results that Riku just presented? I think we'll start with you, Wesley, this time. Please use the mic.
Thank you for that, Riku. Very comprehensive. I suppose I was asked a few questions to reflect on. First of all, does it make sense to evaluate transboundary planning? I think it's critical that we do. To give practical effect to the Marine Spatial Planning Directive or the MSFD, they're all going to happen in a transboundary context. And you can learn from one initiative into the other. I think it's very important that we do that. The developing the criteria is going to be a hugely difficult task. I think you need to understand what type of planning you're talking about when you're developing those criteria. Is it truly transnational or is it international? I think there'd be different criteria for both. But when I was thinking about how you would do it, I think you talk about analysing the process, but there's a broader process that I think you need to reflect on. So if you think of planning, it happens in three phases. You have the normative phase where you talk about what are the values you want to address, what are the issues you want to address. It moves into a strategic phase where we talk about how we could do that, and then it moves into an operational phase. I think the value of this project will actually contribute a lot to the normative phase and the dialogues that will go on within planning departments about what are these issues that what are the issues we need to look at, what are the shared issues that we can tackle. The problem with planning is it often gets to the strategic phase and never actually gets into the operational phase. So I think you need something that captures all that from the normative into the strategic, and hopefully will make it into kind of operational concrete actions. I also think you need to look at planning happening in two spaces. So you got what's known as hard and soft planning. So hard planning will be cooperation between agencies, and it's quite easy to monitor. The actual planning that happens in soft spaces is actually quite critical, because there people throw off the shackles of their jobs, throw off the shackle of the nation state, and think more creatively. And you know, there's a lot of literature from Philip and Graham Horton about these soft spaces. But the discussions that happen in those soft spaces eventually work their way back into the policy context and get ingrained in the planning process. So I think you need somehow to follow the planners and follow the discussions that they have outside of these formal arenas. I think that's actually where the value of this project will actually be. A lot of it is in creating the dialogue about shared opportunities and shared issues. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jan, will you take it next?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, to answer the first question, I think it's quite important, because evaluation is about learning, and as most countries in this region are quite new to MSP. We have a lot of learning to do. And so evaluation and follow-up is about gaining, analyzing what actually happened. Did we take the right decisions, and so forth. So, and it also links to adaptive management, that we have to see if we get the results we thought we would. And I was thinking about this theory of change. As we're quite pragmatic at our agency, we're not really discussing it as theory of change, but we are discussing it as what, how can different zoning descriptions, or what is included in how we define different zones, how can that affect the use of the sea areas? And so we have some practical idea of the function of the MSP, which I think somehow is some sort of a theory of change with the difference which the plan can make. And we have to follow up if we're the ideas we have there are actually correct or in the implementation phase. So when I'm thinking of evaluation, I think that the best thing is if there's a link between the goals you set, the assessment criteria you have in the environmental or socioeconomic evaluation, and the follow-up you do. So because you actually try to follow up if you achieve what you want to achieve with the goals. So, but I think it's a problem with evaluation that it's the last part in the process, and when you're so focused on delivering plans, you easily relax with the evaluation part. So I think this is good input for us to include it. And if we look at Sweden, we have our agency got the task to evaluate the national maritime strategy. And which has these blue growth goals in it, and so that's one of the issues also. How do you delimit the evaluation? And I think MSP is one part of that, the national maritime strategy, but it's also one part of the environmental management in a greater context. So MSP goes into different contexts, and there it's tricky, of course, to know which influence it has on or what are the causal relationships and linkages to MSP. But I think it's important to look at it in a greater context and the other as holistic as possible. Let's see. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jan.
So I'm probably gonna basically say the same thing that Jan said, just to use a bit different words. First of all, I wanted to say that for me, theory of change is a bit misleading, because maritime spatial planning, as it's one part of it is bringing some kind of change. At the same time, there is the need to make sure that some values are kept as they are today and in the future. So maybe the theory of change is a bit misleading. But I really, when it comes to evaluation, I wanted to talk about MSP as a process again. Surprise, surprise. Bear with me. I think that maritime spatial planning will never stop. Maritime spatial plans will never be fully ready. You can adopt them, but you can't forget about them, which also means that you can't forget about transboundary cooperation. Because when you do your plan, you communicate it to your neighboring country. You tell them what kind of change you want to bring, or what kind of values do you want to keep, and then you communicate it. After the plan has been adopted, at some point you have to start evaluating it, which again means that you have to evaluate how the plan has been how has it turned out in real life? And then you have to, again, communicate it to your neighboring country. So it's a never-ending circle. And basically it's a hamster wheel. Once you get in, you'll never get out. So be very careful. Yes, I think I'll stop here.
Thank you. That was a good conclusion for this panel. And now I will open up the floor again for probably have some questions. Someone over there, please use the microphone. It's coming here.
Hi, I'm Anne Dom of Seas at Risk, based in Brussels, where we never get to see the sea, which makes us focus on the topic. I was thinking, hearing this hamster effect, whether it could be an idea to follow the methodology the OECD uses when it does environmental performance reviews. Basically, they use a system of peer reviews, whereby one or more countries actually evaluate the performance of another country, and they do that on a regular basis. Is that something that could be a possible solution to enhance a bit more the transboundary thinking on MSP as well, so that other countries evaluate your maritime spatial plan instead of you doing it yourself?
Mm. So the question was, another country evaluating the MSP process. Someone want to reflect on that? Riku?
I mean, yes, of course, I could say that that's an excellent idea, and and in any case, thinking that, and in the report, we'll discuss also that who might be the evaluator. I mean, it can be also stakeholders evaluating MSP, but that's actually a good idea. But I don't know what, for instance, Anni or Jan might think, that if your neighboring countries would go and evaluate your processes.
What do you think, Jan, if Anni comes and evaluates our Swedish process?
They are welcome, of course. We've got nothing to hide. No, but that's my point. Is that a matter of trust, then, that you can't trust if the own country does the evaluation? And that would be a pity, I think. So I think it would be better to somehow be transparent and agree on methods, or somehow get a common framework for evaluation, and do it in the similar ways, and that it doesn't matter who really does it, because you can trust the results. But still, you could do your neighboring country with that method as well. So it's. But I am questioning the added value of looking at not looking at your own country.
Thank you. Some other questions? Okay.
Thanks. I'm Linus, working at Swedish SWAM as well. I think marine spatial planning is management and policy, and one of the most obvious way of reflecting our societal values is our legal documents. And one way of evaluating if this marine spatial planning really worked in transboundary issues could perhaps be to, after some years or decades, evaluate the legal documents from an EU level. And for instance, will the ESPO convention still look the same? The marine strategy framework, will it be aligned to MSP in a different way? And do we have a mark of MSP in the IMO writings in the future? What do you think about that?
Do you want, Riku?
Well, in the evaluation framework that we have now, in the preparation part of MSP, that's one of the topic discussed, is that it's mainly the other way around. So that is these other policies and laws, are they taken into account in maritime spatial planning laws? But did you mean it the other way around, so that that other policies? Yeah, that's a good question. But then what is the evaluant? What are you evaluating then? It relates to the MSP in a broader context. Definitely, that could be one topic, but it's then goes to more like a side effect evaluation part. That's what is MSP's contribution to other policies. Interesting question.
Thank you for the remark. We've been in Estonia discussing the connections of maritime spatial planning to of the how binding can a maritime spatial plan be, and also we've discussed how much does it have to, or how much does it has to kind of be connected with the existing law, meaning that maybe a maritime spatial plan could be kind of a dream document, saying that this could happen, but we need to change this or that for that. And maybe this would, if a maritime spatial plan could be like something that's a bit above law, which is in Estonia not possible right now, but if it could be, then it would be good to evaluate how much change did the spatial plan in that way bring about. And I really like the concept, but of course, as I said, in Estonia, it's not unfortunately possible to adopt a document like that.
Just a quick reflection on what you're saying. Yes, but it's also we are shaping our laws, and if we adopt a plan, it's the politicians that will sign the plan, so they will work for fulfilling the plan more or less rapidly, I think, and leave a mark in legislation at the end.
Sorry, I just want to go back to the last question. I'm a bit slow thinking today, and the idea of having another nation state come in and evaluate your planning, I think, is very dangerous, because marine spatial planning, whether we like it or not, is going to be about your economy. I know Rona's here from Scotland. Ireland is very envious of the Scottish marine planning system. It's attracting a lot of inward investment. So there will be things that you will want to share with your neighbouring state and tell them how you did it and evaluate it. But planning is more than just the plan. Planning is about attracting people into your area for specific uses. Ireland's been doing it with a low tax base, and the rest of Europe wants us to change it. We're resisting that. So there's certain things that you could share and be evaluated, but there's also the dark arts of planning, and they're quite real. There's a dark side to planning. I think we need to develop evaluation criteria that shine a light on that, and we need to talk about social justice and equity in planning. If we do that within each nation state, then we'll, the benefits will accrue across transboundary. But getting someone else to come in and evaluate your plan, I don't think it will really happen.
Thank you. We have some questions left here in the back, and then we have to sum up here soon.
Hi, Bruna Campos from BirdLife Europe. Just coming back to the comment about having policy change on the basis of MSP, which if I understood correctly, you want something like the MSFD to then take into account to change the policy itself based on the planning. And I think that is counterproductive and is not the actual role of the MSP. MSP is a tool to achieve political commitments, in a sense, either that being environmental commitments, environmental legislations, or other sort of commitments that have been made in terms of for economic reasons. But in a sense, the idea of the planning is so that you don't contradict the legislation that's put out there. And I would be very, very worried if you now start basing environmental legislation on the basis of MSP, because environmental legislation is based on scientific information and on the basis of planning, sort of where it's already been said that planning in the sense is pragmatic of itself. So that's what I would be very worried on. So that was just my comment to that.
John, want to comment?
Yeah, actually, I agree with Anni, and I think Linus's comment. And I'm more thinking of the issue of looking at sectoral legislation and regulations. That MSP being a holistic planning at sea gives new opportunities to make wise the balancing between sectors and the potential it has to come true might depend on changing some of these regulations. And we have a similar discussion as in Estonia, actually in Sweden. If the Swedish MSP being a guiding plan, can we include things which we're not really sure how we will regulate them, but we think that that's the good balancing between interests. So it's a discussion going on, actually, how the role it will have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jan. And the last question over there.
Andrzej Cieślak, Maritime Office in Gdynia. Just to comment shortly on the previous few words is that, in Poland, of course, maritime spatial planning can produce quite important legal effects, but within the framework which is set by acts of higher order, acts of law, meaning acts of parliament or, say, regulations of the EU or something like that. Of course, results of the maritime spatial plan later on, when evaluated, might then influence some change in law, but that would have then to go through the whole process if necessary. Otherwise not. The plan itself cannot change the law. It can only supplement it. Now going to the evaluation part, because this is something which has been troubling me. The presentation was really very theoretical. About the evaluation of the trans-border consultation or Baltic-wide consultation. And so it's rather difficult really to think what it means, especially if I hear that there are 65 indicators of evaluation to be somehow evaluated. And when I think about the 65 indicators and if they require a significant calculation or otherwise data or information collection effort, it becomes impossible. We know what happened, for instance, to the indicators for sustainable development related to the ICZM. The effects of ICZM, there were 40-something. And they required a very big research effort to calculate them. Can you imagine then that if these indicators are complicated, then the effort would be wouldn't happen.
Will you
so
comment
the question is, what
yeah.
are these indicators, please? And this should be the basis of further discussion.
Maybe you will comment on, you will have a final report finished soon, or maybe you can say something about that?
Yes, I can say about the indicators. Yes, there is 65 at the moment. Well, like I said, that the framework in itself, it's quite comprehensive, and it cannot be applied as such because it depends on what kind of transboundary collaboration and you are actually looking at. In BalticSCOPE, we see that between different countries, the issues are quite different, and the framework probably some of the criteria are relevant. But then the indicator system is also such that most of it's more like qualitative verification if some documents are mentioning issues and that kind of thing. It's not the kind of indicator analysis that you mean. But yes, there is a lot of indicators, but it's, I mean, for evaluation you need some structure and some concrete issues to look at, and so it's a kind of a, I understand your concern here, but on the other hand, it's if you want to do evaluation and justify your conclusions, then you need indicators in a qualitative or quantitative way in any case.
Thank you. Now I actually have to start to sum up this session. Before I will leave the final words for the panelists, just a reminder that if you want to discuss this further, Riku and Mikael and Andrea will stay here and you can discuss it. And you also have the possibility with the post-its. So please use them and put them on over there, and they will take care of it and put it into the project. But now I would like to hear short conclusions from the panelists. What have you learned so far, the MSP process? And what do you take home with you from this? Who would like to start? Jan.
No, I'm thinking again. What I've learned so far in the during the session.
What you will take home with you from this?
That we have to work more with evaluation, and it's kind of a hurry. But there's the work being done. I know also that Andrea was involved in a project before, and so we have to look at good examples. And I got stuck in the issue of this transboundary planning, that it's just a dimension of the national MSP, and so we have to link the national evaluation should include the transboundary dimension, I think. So it's
Thank you. Anni, you're next.
Jan again took my thoughts. We've been working together for too long. Well, basically, go on with what Jan just finished. Which was what? Oh yes, exactly. My thought as well is that it kind of has become natural to think on transboundary level already. At first, it felt like something big and scary, and something very, very new and unknown. But the more you deal with it, the more you get familiar with it, and the more it seems like a usual part of your day. Maybe that's the message.
Thank you. And Wesley, what do you take home with you to Belfast?
Yeah, a lot of things actually from the plan itself, what it was developed. But I suppose the most important thing is researchers, planners, regulators working together. I'm sure there was a lot of difficulties along the way. I'm sure when the evaluation happens, people will feel that, you know, Riku's sticking his nose in where it doesn't belong, and that's part of the challenge. But the fact that you've been on this journey together and that everyone's been so involved in it, you know, they're the kind of projects I'd love to be involved in. Love to get regulators writing papers with us and actually thinking through this thing that is marine spatial planning, and thinking through the problems of transboundary planning. I think, you know, I wrote a best practice report for the Irish government 2 years ago, and I pointed to the Baltic as an example of transboundary planning that was going really well. I think you've gone even further again, and I'm sure 2 or 3 years' time when I'm writing another paper, I'm looking for concrete transboundary examples, it will come from the Baltic. But so I'd say very well done to everybody, the researchers, the planners, the regulators for actually sticking with the process.
Thank you. And now I think I would give the floor for the three of you who have been arranging this seminar. Have some concluding. What do you see is the next step for the MSP process and the Baltic SCOPE project? You want to give any comments?
Well, obviously for Baltic SCOPE project there isn't that many steps left anymore, but yes, certainly I think, well, personally, from this session what I got is even though we know the kind of the interplay between national and transboundary levels of planning and collaboration, and it's so, you know, different in different contexts. That's clearly one thing that to clarify, and actually in the coming years in Baltic Sea, that would be interesting to see when more and more of the countries are actually doing their national plans, and for quite obvious reasons in this type of sea you have to collaborate with your neighbors. And then if we already have quite well institutionalized collaboration in Helcom WASAP working group, for instance, between planning authorities, and then, you know, there are some wishes about more coherent planning and some skepticism, is it possible? But that will be interesting to see in the future. That would kind of transboundary solutions we can develop.
Thank you. Mikael, would you want to?
Yes, two things or three then. Of course, finalizing the final products is now really high on the agenda, and we got a lot of good input, and we also hope that you provide us with further ideas on these posters there. But then two things, I think, for the now that the MSP or the train of MSP projects moves further, I think important how to involve stakeholders, so going down a level from the national state down to the regional level and local level. And what does it mean specifically in transboundary contexts? Like we have projects working on that, Bolt Space for instance, but also developing decision-making models probably is something which is quite intriguing. And then also moving a level up, like how can we kind of cross-fertilize what we have learned in the Baltic Sea region to other sea basins? And I think we had Wesley here, and I think the exchange between researchers will continue. But also how can we develop the obstacles and enablers further so that they can be customized and implemented in other sea basins. So I think these are the two. So down, up, and cross-fertilizing. So that's the thing. Andrea.
Yes, one last word. Thank you very much. It has been an extremely interesting session. Well, as always, if you're sitting or standing and taking notes, it's a little bit a mess in your head. But what I really can see is that this venue here is part of a discussion process on how do we want to manage our marine areas, and how do we want to develop it, and how do we have the important knowledge and the skills and everything combined, all the research and the practitioners and those who are using it, who know a lot about their areas, and how can we combine this and how can we continue combining this in the future. So I would really also ask you to put up your post-its over there. Green is enablers, red is obstacles, and yellow is general comments. And after this, what we will do is we will put it over there in the big room at the pillars, like that, and you can continue putting up post-its. Just don't take anything away, or in that case replace it if it's your own. And we will try to include that discussion also in our lessons learned report, and that has been really, really interesting. And I just want to lift Michael's question a bit further. Yes, I think we haven't really started yet thinking about the implementation, but we need to start. It's like also having to start thinking about evaluation. And we also need to start about that. And thank you very much for coming here. It has been a pleasure. And thank you, Johanna.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to panelists. And my last word would be, now this session is ended. Next 6:30, if you want to join the dinner. As Axel said this morning, there will be buses to the venue. And otherwise we'll meet tomorrow morning. Thank you.